As we come to this second Sunday of Advent, there's only 2 more left. But as secular society has been getting ready for Christmas since probably July or August, right? You've seen the wrapping paper out, the trees, and all the inside and outside decorations, and the Christmas music is on various radio stations of whether it's AM or FM or Sirius or what have you. And we can choose to sort of drown it out or ignore it. But we also can embrace it. And you might say, oh, Father, we're just getting ready. You're right. Advent is the joyful anticipation of the coming of Jesus. And the first 2 weeks, it's that joyful anticipation of the coming of Jesus on the clouds of heaven, the second coming. The last 2 are getting us ready for the coming of Jesus as a baby in the manger. But as we're celebrating that second Sunday of Advent and that second joyful anticipation of Jesus' coming on the clouds of heaven, are we ready? Are we ready to meet Jesus if he should come? And what I mean by that is, literally, are our bags packed, our souls ready, minds ready to embrace the second coming? I don't know. It's an individual answer. But as you hear in all 3 of these readings, joy. And what I was getting at the very beginning of my homily was, does putting up the tree and receiving and writing those cards and baking and cleaning the house and decorating and getting involved in the preparation for Jesus' coming, whether the second coming or that coming of that beautiful baby in the manger, giving us joy? I'm sorry to say, but when we walk around, we are in different places of commerce, I don't see and hear a lot of joy. We tend to be sometimes joyless. God is asking us to be joyful, right? As we hear in this gospel passage, St. John the Baptist goes through the whole region of the Jordan, proclaiming baptism of repentance and the forgiveness of sins. He is that one, as the prophet Isaiah says, a voice of one crying out in the desert, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight his paths. And that's what we're doing. We're preparing the way of the Lord in our own minds, in our own hearts, and our own souls for that coming of Jesus. Either way, if we look up in the clouds of heaven and we hear the angel blow the trumpet, or if that doesn't happen, we're getting ready for Jesus' birth in the manger. But it's the whole idea. It's a joyful anticipation and preparation of the coming of Jesus. In other words, we need to be joyful. We have enough people who are curmudgeons walking around and people crabbing and in lines at stores and impatient and all that stuff. Just be thankful, right? As we hear St. Paul remind us as he very much begins his letter to the Philippians, I pray always with joy in my every prayer for all of you, because of your partnership for the gospel from the first day until now. He's praying, right? As he says very, very clearly, I pray always with joy in my every prayer for all of you. Are we praying joyfully this time of year, or are we begrudgingly praying because I got these cards to write, I have these decorations to do, I've got to go here, I've got to do that, and the weather's not cooperating? Where's the joy? You see, a lot of times we really miss Jesus. We miss the second coming. We miss the baby Jesus because we're so caught up in doing stuff. We forget it's a joyful time of year. Now, for many people, this is an extremely sad time of year. They've lost loved ones, very close, very dear loved ones. And it gives them, from that song, I think it's Elvis Presley, but someone will correct me, I'm sure, whether it's here in live television or I'll get emails in my parish. Elvis Presley, I'll have a blue Christmas. Right? And some people do. This time of year it's very sad. But try to help them to see the joy of the season. Remember, we're going to see a lot of it on bumper stickers, on magnets on cars. Jesus is the reason for the season, right? It is a season of joy. But don't forget to help others whose season of joy, it's very difficult for them. Be there for them. Listen to them. Be present to them. In all of this, it is to be joyful. It is to realize the coming of Jesus. And as the church begins the liturgical year, as it did the first Sunday of Advent, and now we're in the second weekend of that liturgical year, we should be thinking, what are we doing for this liturgical year? Not just at Advent and not just Christmas, but what's the one thing that we're going to do throughout the year? I would give you a hint. It's a 3-letter word. I think I've said it, I don't know how many times in my homily. Joy. You know, we go around, I remember being at one of St. Mary's in Ware, and right on Route 32, someone had the 3 letters, J-O-Y, all lit up. And people drove by, and I want to say, and how many people are reading that, and they're going to translate that into what they're saying and what they're doing. It's to be joyful, to have a joyful spirit. You look at many of the lives of the great saints, many of them that we celebrate, they have an obligatory memorial, and some of the saints that we celebrate, that they're optional memorials. A lot of them, if you read their lives, they were joyful. Whether it was dusting, mopping the floor, or whatever menial task they were doing. As St. Therese of Lisieux would say, she's picking up the feather on the floor joyfully, out of love for God and her fellow sisters. Are we doing things joyfully for God? Or are we going to the grocery store and wrapping this one with our carriage and wrapping that one? Get out of the way, I need this. Not a lot of joy. Not a lot of joy. Remember, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit dwell within us. We should be always filled with joy. As the good and holy deacon Joe Gard Emeritus, who's with us today, right? Try and do your best. Let God do the rest. Try. God doesn't ask that we've succeeded. God asks, as he says, we try. But we have to try to do our best. Joyfully. I'll add that. I hope you don't mind. Try to do your best joyfully. And God will do the rest, I'm assuming, joyfully as well. But we need to try. And every day is a day to get up, reorientate ourselves, and say to ourselves, have I been joyful yesterday? What am I going to do joyfully today to begin that preparation for the coming of Jesus? Because if Jesus appears on the clouds of heaven before it gets dark and it gets real light out, are you going to be ready? Or are you going to be calling him, Father, I got to go to confession. Father, it's going to be too late. Too late. We need to be always ready. I remember Father O'Brien from the Worcester Diocese. I used to go visit him. He lived in West Brookfield, and I was stationed in Ware. And I used to go visit, once a month. He was older, and he lived by himself, and just to go visit. And he had a suitcase in the hallway. I walked in, and you turned the corner, it was, went down to the bedrooms or whatever. There was a suitcase against the wall. And I got the courage after about 5-6 visits. I said, Father, you going on a vacation? He goes, no. I go, Father, for the last 5 or 6 months I've come to see you've got a suitcase in the hallway. Oh, yes, he says to me, Father, I'm ready. And I said, Father, what are you ready for? I'm ready to meet Jesus. Everything's in there. My alb, my vestment, everything. I'm ready to go home to God. And I said, well, Father. He said, well, I'm 95. What do you expect? I don't have much time left. I said, well, Father, I give you credit. You're prepared. He said, I am. But he always said that with a smile. And at the end, when we finished that conversation, and he said, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm joyful to go home to see the Lord. And I thought, wow, at his number of years of service, I think he was in 60-something years of ordination, maybe close to 70. He was, like I said, about 95. And he still had that joy, and he was ready. And I would say to him, need anything spiritually? And sometimes he'd say yes, sometimes he'd say no. But he says, I'm ready. I'm ready to meet Jesus. And he was joyful in that. He wasn't upset. He wasn't doing the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. He was ready. And that's what we need to be. We may not have the wisdom of 95 years, but that wisdom should pass on to us that we are ready and we're joyful about it. We're not begrudgingly celebrating Advent to then celebrate Christmas, but it's joyful. And you might say, well, that's easy for you to say. Oh, it's easy to say. Very easy to say. But the harder part is to live it out. And that's where the good and holy deacon, Joe Gard Emeritus, comes in. Try to do your best and let God do the rest. And if you don't mind, good and holy deacon, I'm going to add, let go and let God. It's not all about us, me, I doing it. It's about God. Let go and let God do it. As he said, try to do your best, God will do the rest, joyfully. Be joyful. Do you think they're going to let unjoyful people into the kingdom of heaven? Not so sure about that. I don't think so. Joyful in that love that we have for God and that love that we have for one another. Because that person in the parking lot trying to push your carriage through the cold or the snow, or the person in the store, the person who may be there begging or what have you, that could be Jesus. Were you joyful to him or her? Were you kind to them? Did you smile at them? Not did you give them money or food. Did you love them in the moment? Did you joyfully love them in the moment? Because if you have been, you've heard St. John the Baptist and you've done what he's asked. Prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight his paths. And that path leads directly to the kingdom of heaven. And now let us stand for our profession of faith.